All right, we have a big show for you today. Welcome back. I'm Jeremy Safran. The war machine has moved markets once again. Gold is near another record high. Oil just spiked more than 13%. And Bitcoin, despite a brief sell-off, remains at the center of a monetary revolution. Now, Israel has launched direct strikes on Iranian nuclear targets, killing Iran's top generals. And this story and the retaliation from Iran is still developing as we tape this. Now, markets have reacted fast. Brent crude surged. The dollar snapped back from a three-year low. But it was Bitcoin's behavior that raised eyebrows yet again. A 5% drop, then a sharp rebound. Echoes of October 2024, the last Israel and Iran conflict, triggered an 80% rally in BTC. And while crypto skeptics were dumping, the billionaires were buying. Ken Griffin, Steve Cohen, even pension funds in Michigan, Wisconsin, and the UK are now adding Bitcoin spot ETFs to their portfolios. And BlackRock's IBIT now holds more than 3% of all BTC in circulation. So, is this where the legacy financial system meets the edge of collapse? A growing number of institutions and high net worth individuals are voting with their balance sheets, and they're saying no to fiat, no to debasement, and yes to Bitcoin and gold. Joining me now is one of the loudest and most committed voices on this issue, Ricardo Salinas. He's a billionaire chairman of Grupo Salinas. He controls Mexico's second largest TV network, Electra, and Banco Azteca. He's also the author of a new book, The Bitcoin Enlightenment, Ending the Fiat Age, the Dark Fiat Age, I should say. Now, Mr. Salinas is one of the largest private holders of Bitcoin in Latin America and a vocal critic of government spending money and printing money, central banks, and, of course, bad economics. Bienvenido, Ricardo.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Pleasure is all mine. I appreciate you making the time for us. Obviously, as you can hear from that intro, lots to get into. And let's start here. Oil is spiking. Gold is climbing. Bitcoin seemed to drop a little bit, then snap back. But beyond the charts, you've said for years, fiat is a fraud. I mean, you've called the central banks a cartel, and you've made Bitcoin your personal bet on freedom. Ricardo, with all this geopolitical situations around the globe and people waking up to what debasement is, are we finally watching the global market pivot away from government money?
Well, I hope so, but I don't think so. It's going to take a long time. It took a long time to get here, and it's going to take a longer time to get away from this fiat fraud thing. Mainly because, the authors of the fraud are the people in government and positions of power, and they're the number one beneficiaries of all this money printing. Mm-hmm. Of course, the normal people are the ones that lose their savings through inflation and debasement. So, Bitcoin is here to stay. I really don't care about its price daily. As a matter of fact, it's funny because I heard in your intro that billionaires are buying. Happens to be that we're in a buying this precise week unrelated to this war. But we've increased our Bitcoin holdings considerably just in this past week, because I'm not going to be waiting to time the perfect moment to get in. I just know what's going to happen down the road, and I don't want to miss out on that. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Well said. And I mean, we got to talk about what's happening. I mean, you're one of the few, I would say a lot of Bitcoin fanatics are hoping people don't just watch that price every single day. I don't know if you know macro analyst Lynn Alden, but she calls Bitcoin the purest barometer of global liquidity. Her team found that Bitcoin tracks global money supply better than stocks, bonds, and even gold. When liquidity expands, Bitcoin tends to rise. When central banks tighten, it falls, as you know. But here's the tension. I mean, liquidity is contracting and the world is tightening. War, as I mentioned, is breaking out. Gold and oil rally. Bitcoin at first sold off again. So I guess the question is, if Bitcoin is the ultimate monetary signal, why does it keep falling in moments of crisis when inflation surges or bombs drop? Is it just weak hands panicking?
Well, markets are completely unpredictable on a day-to-day basis. They can go up and they can go down. But you really have to look at the longer term. There's no single explanation for what happens in one day. There's just lots of things, sentiment, things. So, but coming back to what you said, I know Lynn Alden well, and I heard her talk in Las Vegas, and she said, nothing stops the train. What is the train? The train is money printing and debasement till hell freezes over.
Yeah, $40 billion or $40 trillion in debt right now, and some skeptics say, this is why gold still matters. It holds up in chaos. Bitcoin, they argue, vanishes when you need it the most. What's your direct rebuttal when you hear things like that?
Well, I appreciate all the Kitco audience, and I've been part of this myself. I was an unrepentant gold bug until I found out about Bitcoin. And guess what? After that, I think that gold has its place, but Bitcoin is a better deal. And Saylor has done a really good job of explaining why this digital capital with absolute liquidity, with absolute mobility, divisibility, very difficult for the government to get its hands on it. There's all these reasons why Bitcoin is a new gold. So I think that the sooner your audience all gets on board the train, the better.
Yeah. I mean, we see the gold bugs and even the Bitcoin bugs coming together because they understand a little bit about the debasement. And you brought up government there. I mean, what happens when governments panic? Argentina once imposed capital controls. I mean, Turkey tried to shut the exits. There's been recent proposals in Mexico to restrict capital flight. Could Bitcoin be outlawed in practice, not by law, but by force?
Well, I know all about that because I was a victim of that. And that's why I wrote this book, the Bitcoin Enlightenment.
I love it.
Enlightenment means we got to see the light. When I was a young guy in the 80s, our currency depreciated in a massive way. Mm-hmm. And we got to experience, the hard end of that problem. The value of the dollar went from 20 pesos to 1 to 3,000 to 1 in just 6 years. Mm-hmm. So that is hyper debasement, hyperinflation. And once you've seen that and you deal with it on a day-to-day business, apart from going bankrupt, which we did, how do you get out of it? So it really enlightens you as to what can happen. And, again, Saylor says this very well. Fiat currencies have a constant, terrible track record. Mm-hmm. The US dollar, which is supposed to be, the strongest currency of the strongest current country in the world, it's got lost 99% of its value over the past 40 years. I mean, this is ridiculous. All of these fiat currencies end the same way, which is in tears.
In tears
for their holders.
Well, we got to talk about Mexico because the peso is also down over about 10% since Claudia Sheinbaum's election victory. Markets are nervous. I mean, there's judicial reforms, militarization of infrastructure, and AMLO's shadow is kind of looming here. Is the Mexican peso at risk of becoming the next casualty of government overreach?
Well, this is very interesting because after this communist regime won the elections in Mexico, I would have thought and bet on the peso getting weaker. That is the dollar getting more expensive for Mexico. But exactly the opposite happened. So much for our abilities to prognosticate markets, right? It is now on a very strong path, and the value of the US dollar in Mexican peso terms is dirt cheap. Mm-hmm. So there's a reason for that. And the reason is that there's about 40 million Mexicans living outside of Mexico, mostly working in the US. And they send $6 billion a month in remittances to Mexico. And I know about that because we pay about half of all of that through our network of stores and banks. Mm-hmm. So that constant flow of dollar offering into the market makes its price go down. And that's happening in spite of the nefarious political regime that we have now in our country.
It's interesting. Do you anticipate that, as we see what's happening with the U.S. side in terms of, putting people back in their countries? Is that being talked about at all?
Well, of course, it's become a huge political issue because, the Trump discourse is all these migrants are criminals and we should kick them back to their country, which is a very simplistic argument. There's a lot of honest and hardworking people of Mexican origin that live in the US. And most of them are totally legal there. So what we're seeing here is just a racist rant. And it's very convenient for the electoral base of Mr. Trump. But in terms of human cost, it is just enormous. And Mexicans are being constantly pointed out and singled out as criminals, which they're not. Right?
Yeah, of course they're not. Okay, well, I have to ask you about El Salvador. I mean, it's made Bitcoin.
I'm sorry, there's criminals in all kinds of races and nationalities. The criminals are the individuals. You cannot accuse the whole citizens of the country of being criminals or the whole race of being criminals. This is the typical collectivist, statist thinking that ends up by trampling our individual and human rights.
Yeah. Speaking of rights, I have to ask you, I mean, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. Argentina now has the pro-Bitcoin president, as you know. Would you ever push for something similar in Mexico, or is that impossible under the current political regime?
Yeah. As I said, the governments are the number one beneficiaries of the fiat fraud, and they're not about to let go of that. The reason why El Salvador was able to do that is that they had abdicated the sovereign power to print money a long time ago. They were on the dollar standard already, which is really crazy, because when a country goes on a dollar standard, they cede full monetary authority to the U.S. government, which is not like the most reliable partner. And so that's why they were able to do that. But other than that, if the money owns a central bank, I mean, if the government owns the central bank and owns the printing presses, they're not letting go. Nobody's letting go.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, you're on the ground. You got a unique perspective, my friend. I mean, you operate one of Mexico's largest retail banks. What are you seeing on the ground? Are depositors beginning to hedge with Bitcoin or physical gold?
No, Mexicans are way behind the learning curve here. It's not only Mexicans. It's just the vast majority of people are not money managers. Mm-hmm. They don't understand money. And what they want to do is have a safe investment, you know what I mean? And not lose their hard-earned money. And I have sympathy for that. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, fiat is not the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, you've been one of the most outspoken critics of central banks, and now we're seeing the next phase, central bank digital currencies. The IMF is pushing for CBDCs across Latin America. Mexico's government says its digital peso will be ready by 2026, but obviously critics, including you, warn that this isn't innovation, it's control. So, I mean, Ricardo, talk to us about this. I mean, what's your warning to the public about CBDCs, and how does this tie into your call to exit fiat and to own Bitcoin?
This is CBDC, central bank digital currency, is the most diabolical invention ever. I mean, if fiat was bad, these central bank digital currencies are the worst because, it's really programmable money in the hands of the fraudsters. Mm-hmm. So they are able to turn on your purchasing power or turn it off at will. And just think about that. Yeah. The money that you earn with your hard work is able to be withdrawn from your control and spending and purchasing power at will by some goddamn bureaucrat in the central bank. Yeah. I mean, you got to be crazy to accept that. Yeah. And really, I think that would be the end of fiat. If they do that, it's going to be so obvious that
why are people why do they want it? I mean, what's the argument for it at this point?
Well, because we're become so digitized. Our world has become digital, and our phones, our screens, with these digits are full of value. You have in your phone, you have your stock portfolio and you're just little numbers. You never have a real title to the stock. You don't have a stock certificate. You don't have a bond certificate. You don't have cash. These are just digits on the screen. So it's very simple to change these digits of cash for these digits of central bank digital currency. It's so simple. And I think they can get away with it, but it's the perfect time for hard money guys like us to point out the enormous fraud and risk that it represents. But I just want to see the one day when you try to spend your digital dollars, your CBDCs, in a bar at 4 a.m. and the government says, no, that's bad for your health.
Yeah, it's bad for your health. And also, I mean, what happens if you're like Portugal and Spain where the power goes out and we have no access to anything?
Well, the power goes down, the internet goes down. That's been thrown around. If that happens, we're going to have a shitload of other problems, So we'll deal with that when it comes.
Yeah, I hope not. Okay, I have to ask you because we're watching something remarkable unfold. I mean, MicroStrategy controls over 1 in every 40 Bitcoin. BlackRock's IBIT now holds more than 3% of all BTC in circulation. Even sovereign funds are quietly accumulating. I mean, you've called Bitcoin the escape valve from fiat. Are we witnessing the slow birth of a new global monetary base, not just this volatile tech trade, but the reserve asset of a parallel system?
Absolutely, yes. And the emergence of these exchange traded funds that own Bitcoin, like IBIT, of which, by the way, I have a substantial position in that instrument. It has made Bitcoin buying very easy for big money and institutional money and in general big money because it trades just like another stock. It's easy, it's easy for me to say, well, let's buy 100 million of Apple or 100 million of Nvidia or whatever. Now you can do exactly the same thing, buy 100 million of IBIT. It has huge liquidity and you get the exposure. Now, there's a problem. It's not Bitcoin, okay? It's a custodial system. They say they have the Bitcoin. I want to think that they do. But they're vulnerable to a land grab by the government. The government can go and say, I like that honeypot. Give me that Bitcoin. And we're screwed then. So it has its downsides.
It's been evolving. It's obviously, as it continues to mature in the market, we've been seeing these spot Bitcoin ETFs. People seem to be going for it, as you say. Has it gotten better, or is it still kind of in its early era there?
Well, it's hardly a year and some months that the ETF started. But so it's got a huge volume of trading. It's also got options. But again, it's not Bitcoin, and it's very vulnerable to expropriation. I mean, the U.S. did this with Roosevelt. In 1933. It wouldn't be the first or the last time. No, they said, give me the gold. Well, they could say tomorrow, give me the Bitcoin. And what do we do then? Complain to who? To the government who stole it?
Yeah. Never going to get it back if that's the case. Okay,
so we're coins in your wallet, cold storage, multi-sig, and that is the way to go for Bitcoin.
I got to ask you that. I mean, you own a bank. You understand product market fit. Would you ever launch a Bitcoin-backed financial institute through Banco Azteca? Something maybe safer than fiat, tailored to Mexican savers who want that stability you talked about?
Well, the nature of banks is to be part of the fiat fraud system, right? We take deposits and then we lend them out. So the original sin of all banks is borrowing on the short side. Short-dated borrowing, and then lending long. This is the original sin since banking was invented because of fiat and paper money. That's the way it works. Now, some banks are tremendous sinners. My bank is a little bit sinner, not so bad because our liquidity is so high, But some banks really make an extraordinary job. Like, for example, this Silicon Valley Bank that went broke last year. They were taking these at-site deposits. And then these, geniuses of the board and supervisors allowed them to buy long-dated U.S. treasuries, betting that rates were going to go down from 1.5% to 1%. You got to be moronic to do that kind of bet. And the result is there. They went broke.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at Latin America, could that region lead the transition, though? We talked a little bit about El Salvador, but a little bit about Argentina. Could they lead that transition where Bitcoin becomes the monetary bedrock of, under these unstable local currencies?
No, I don't think so. Latin America is a very big place. Every time I hear something say of Latin America, my antennas go up. There's a big difference between Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, Central America. That's very different. Brazil. So no, I don't think there's going to be anything like that. But what is happening, regardless, is that Bitcoin is emerging as the new global reserve asset. Mm-hmm. So Bitcoin is a new global reserve asset. It will surpass gold. So take that as take-home values from this talk. One thing, Bitcoin will be more valuable than gold shortly. Now, today, at $105,000 per Bitcoin, the 2 billion, the 20 million Bitcoins that are out there, well, they're worth, 2 point something trillion. Mm-hmm. Gold is worth like 16 trillion. So Bitcoin should go up at least 8 times to equate the storehouse or the value storage capacity of gold. And I have no doubts that it will happen very shortly. I mean, I wouldn't say when, but if you look at any trend, gold, in terms of Bitcoin, the trend is going down, and it's so easy to see,
Yeah. Ricardo, you made a lot of headlines in the past couple of months because you talked about that 70% Bitcoin, 30% in gold and gold miners. Let's turn to gold and the miners. You've spoken about your positions in all these assets, as I mentioned. Mexico remains a top 3 global producer of both gold and silver, but we're seeing the rising headwinds. We got these royalty hikes, permitting delays, this growing cartel risk, and then, of course, investors basically flight after Sheinbaum's victory. Can Mexico still function as a stable investable jurisdiction for hard money assets in a world that's rapidly kind of remonetizing commodities?
So, the Mexican mining sector has been under attack by the past government of AMLO and this government of Sheinbaum. They have a constituency of ultra left-wing radical nuts that have this idea of mining being a terrible offense to Mother Earth, Gaia. And God forbid if you scratch her, all hell will rain down on you. So this primitive thinking against mining has done a lot of damage to the Mexican mining industry. So Mexico has huge, enormous mining resources. But this small group of radicals, with a lot of international support, has totally taken over the narrative. So basically what's happening is there's no new mines or exploration going on, very few of that. And I would be really careful as an investor as to putting my money into a long-term mining project in Mexico, because not only are these nuts constantly being aggressive against you, but also the Mexican government has totally ruined its budget balance and is hungry for new sources of revenue. And they will not hesitate to tax the hell out of miners in Mexico, as they have already done with all these special taxes.
Yeah, it's so interesting because
I'm not bullish about investing in Mexican mines.
Okay. No Mexican mines, but maybe, some other. You've been vocal about sound money, obviously. Are you putting capital into mining yourself, whether through, public entities, maybe some private placements, physical offtake?
Yeah, absolutely. 70% Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners, very few, 2 or 3. Yeah. A little bit of MicroStrategy, and then the other 30% is in gold, physical gold, in storage, and a selection of maybe 5 or 6 gold miners.
Who do you like?
The royalty companies, Wheaton, Newmont, Alamos. Yeah, so not many, but we've done really well with that portfolio. Yesterday, for example, Bitcoin was down, but then gold was up, and now Bitcoin is back up and gold is stable. So yeah, I'm happy with that portfolio.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you on the royalty side too. It's almost like an ETF, easier for people to put a little bit of capital, less risk almost on the royalty side. Do you find?
That's very important to me, because from where you are in Vancouver, there's lots of mining operators. Yeah. And I have to say, I was very active in that space about 10 years ago. And I'm still surprised by the amount of thievery and scams that these guys pull off in small miners. It's really dangerous ground.
Yeah, the juniors you're talking about, these promoted kind of, they have nothing, that kind of deals.
That, and they have an exploration thing, and then they raise some money, and then they go and dilute the hell of the investors, and then they set off, and everybody loses money except the promoters through their management fees and compensation. So I'd be very careful with that.
Yeah, well said. Do your research on that. I mean, some Bitcoin purists say forget gold. It's slow, it's state controlled, it can be confiscated, as you said, or even taxed arbitrarily, especially in unstable jurisdictions. Should investors still be looking at gold miners then? And if so, just kind of the royalty plays?
Well, the thing about the royalty play is that it takes away the execution risk of the miner management. And, management of miners doesn't have a great reputation. There must be like 2 or 3 serious people in there who know what they're doing, but they go crazy with investments in CapEx, and then they screw the shareholders. So yeah, I'm much more pro the streamers, the royalty streamers, and just 1 or 2 miners. Yes.
Yeah, and you said you watched Kitco, so I got to ask you, Ricardo, because you call Bitcoin the better horse, but you still do hold some gold. I mean, I just want to unpack the dual strategy. In your view, when does it make sense to hold physical gold, and when can you lean heavier on Bitcoin, for instance?
Well, physical is everything. If you own paper gold, you're on the wrong track. I mean, there's a lot of ifs and buts about physical paper gold, sorry.
Yeah.
So if you're going to own gold, you might as well have it in storage, in a safe place, in several safe places outside of your jurisdiction. And that was what I do. It makes me feel more comfortable about that. But I still have, the 70% Bitcoin exposure and 30% gold.
Yeah. Would you ever
king metal, silver, which never goes anywhere.
Yeah, I know. Do you love silver or hate it like some of our audience? It's one of those relationships, right?
Yeah, it's like one of those. I have a big bar of silver on the door as a doorstop.
Yeah. Hey, would you ever tokenize physical gold reserves through one of your firms? Something that combines the safety of bullion with the agility of crypto?
I love that idea. I mean, tokenization is so important. And like stable coins have taught us about the value of tokens. The fact that you can trade tokens 24 hours a day, peer to peer, without any government interference, without having a bank account, because banks now have become the choke point of the financial system. And bankers, we have to work for free for the government and follow their orders. And if the government tells us to freeze your assets, we will freeze you. If the government tells you to blackball you, we will blackball you. So stable coins, these tokens, allow you to sidestep all of that. And I think that for sure, gold would be much better in a tokenized form than in paper gold like the GLD, the ETF, or all the other exchange traded products. Yeah. So yes, I think there's a lot of future in the blockchain and tokens, but I would definitely steer away from what is called shitcoins and all of the crypto scams that are flying around all over the world. There's no future in that. And it's really a disgrace because people speak of crypto and then say, well, Bitcoin has this. No. There's Bitcoin and everything else.
Yeah, right? Well said. Well said. It brings us a good time to talk about your new book because you call fiat money the economic murder of God, rather. I mean, it's a system that enslaves savers, enables reckless governments, and pushes people into this financial nihilism. You write that Bitcoin is redemption, a way to restore truth and individual freedom. What is the core message that you want people, especially in Mexico as well, to take from this book?
Yeah. The core message is freedom. Yeah. You have to be free. Of course, before you're free, you have to be responsible and you have to have your values clear. For example, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. That's number one. But number two is once you have those values, you want to be free. And Bitcoin is freedom. Freedom from all this government interference and from this government theft, which is inflation and debasement, and taxation, which is also theft, right? So that's the main message. If you want to be free, you must have Bitcoin.
I got to ask you, you've lived through currency collapses. I mean, you talked about it when that company went bankrupt, this hyperinflation, asset seizures, these capital controls, things most Western investors don't, that we think it can't happen here, basically. So do you see signs that the US and Europe are now walking the same path? Is the West repeating the very mistakes that set, those countries back decades?
Absolutely, yes. It's exactly the same path. And, the only reason that for America it's different is because they print the ultimate reserve currency of the world. So they will never have a run on the currency because they can print as much as they need. But Canada sure as hell has devalued and debased. And you can see what happened to the Canadian dollar. And the same thing will happen to all fiat currencies.
Yeah.
There's no way out. I mean, excessive government spending creates two problems. Number one, it creates a huge drag on the economy because all that spending has to come out of the people's pockets, either through taxes or inflation, which is the same thing. And second, all the big government spending creates a huge government, which by definition is corrupt and inefficient. So that is also an additional factor in the collapse.
Okay, last question. I know you're one of the busiest mans in Mexico, no pun intended there. Okay, my friend, I mean, you've built and preserved, obviously, multi-generational wealth in turbulent environments. How do you prepare your own children and grandchildren for a world where money itself is broken? I mean, do they fully buy into Bitcoin and gold, or do you face pushback even inside your own family?
Well, I have 6 children, 3 older ones who have a very successful life of their own. They have their own businesses. And I'm very happy with the way they have turned out because all of them have demonstrated that they have quality values and leadership capabilities. And I think they're fully aligned with my train of thought. Maybe they're a little bit less radical about my dim view of government. Still, they're young and optimistic. And then the other 3, which are smaller, those are turning out really interesting because I spent a lot more time with them because of circumstances. And I'm very happy. We talk a lot, and they're all of them are Bitcoin orange pilled, and they hate fiat. And they're actually working on borrowing fiat to buy Bitcoin.
Wow. Quite a feat. So they're listening to you then, huh?
Yeah, actually, we developed a very interesting product, which is if you have a house, you have equity in the house, take a mortgage and buy Bitcoin. And then you pay down the interest in fiat with selling just a little bit of your Bitcoins every year. It's a great investment for everybody out there. There's another take-home value. Mortgage your house, Bitcoin.
Hey, there'll be some people that like that one. Okay, well, this is perfect because the final word, someone watching this, maybe in Mexico City, maybe in Chicago, still believes in fiat. I mean, their savings are sitting in pesos or dollars, maybe even at one of your own banks, my friend. What do you say to them now in 2025?
Well, listen, of course you need fiat because this is the way the world runs. So I'm not saying that we just totally drop fiat. What I'm saying is don't invest in fiat denominated assets. That's what I'm saying. So if you have certificates of deposit in the bank, they better be very short term and there better be just a sort of a kind of a parking space before you find the right investment. But I'm talking about people who need to invest their money for 5, for 10, for 20 years. And those people, if they have a treasury bond, a 10-year bond, a 20-year bond, a 30-year bond, get rid of it now, today. It's the most stupid investment in the world. Buy Bitcoin.
Buy Bitcoin. I like it. Well, you heard it here. Ricardo Salinas is the chairman of Grupo Salinas, founder of Banco Azteca, TV Azteca, one of Mexico's largest private holders of Bitcoin, and maybe even the largest private holder of Bitcoin in Mexico, I would say. And also the author of the new book, which you should go out and read, The Bitcoin Enlightenment, Ending the Fiat Dark Age. Show it right there, my friend. I like it. Hey, Ricardo, thank you for joining us today. I hope to meet you one day in Mexico City. It's one of my favorite places in the world.
Yes, we'll be glad to have you here. And it is. Mexico City is a wonderful place. Don't let all these racist critics of Mexicans in Mexico get in your mind. This is a wonderful place to live. We got problems like everybody else in the world, but this is a wonderful place and it's very welcoming, warm, and tourists have a great time in Mexico, especially Mexico City.
Mexico City. The best food, the best people. Thanks, my friend. Appreciate it for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, Jeremy.
Bye-bye. All right, for more hard-hitting interviews and real financial insight, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. For Kitco News, I'm Jeremy Safran. Thank you for watching.